Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of the Bitstocks podcast. I'm Cyrus Yari, joined by
Stephen Arthur.
And I joined Bitstocks about a month ago. Stephen, if I'm not mistaken, you've been with the guys for almost a year now?
Just over
a year. Okay. So in this kind of space, they'd consider you a veteran, despite the fact that you're a graduate from uni. So, we've decided to start this podcast. We've been discussing it even since before I joined, I've been discussing it with a few of the guys from Bitstocks, and we're both huge advocates of the blockchain space. Please do not consider any of this as financial, legal, or tax advice. These are solely the views of our own and not Bitstocks. It's just two blockchain nerds chopping it up a couple of times a week, talking everything blockchain. And I'm sure quite a lot of you are familiar with who Bitstocks are. It's not an arrogant comment at all. For those of you who don't, we'd love to speak to you. It's a small community. We love to support each other, and we love to get to know you as well. So please feel free to check out the notes in the description box. We've also linked a few other things you may find useful, such as maybe LinkedIn pages of myself and Stephen and anything else that will be useful. So we'll link down everything in the description and the notes. Feel free to check those out depending on which platform you're listening on. And so how are you doing today, Stephen, mate?
Yeah, good. Excited. First podcast, first of many. Just excited to start getting them out there, help educate people and teach them about the space, as well as add our own sort of little twist onto it. We don't just want it to be super formal. We want to be engaging, get you guys involved with us, and we'll be answering questions you guys actually ping through to us via comments, or we might do some live sessions soon, all in the pipeline. Yeah,
beautiful. So give us a 60-second snapshot of yourself, seeing as it's the first episode. Who the hell are you? You sit next to me every day, and what's your story?
One, not a great sight sitting next to you, but okay, so I am a university graduate, completed a first-class economics degree, and I recently joined Bitstocks. I was working with Bitstocks part-time whilst I was at uni, bunking quite a few lessons to come in, be challenged on a daily basis.
It's fine, mate. We know how flawed the current education system is anyway. You didn't even need to go uni, but I'll let you carry on.
Yeah. So rather than working for Bitstocks, I like to see myself working with Bitstocks. I want to help Bitstocks reach its long-term aspirations, which is, advocating Bitcoin to the world, teaching people about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and really seeing why they deserve a fundamental place in society. And that's a little bit about me.
Good
60
stuff.
Seconds on you.
Good stuff. Yeah, my story is pretty boring. So went traditional routes of university, and then ended up doing a master's in finance, did a few internships in the city, landed a graduate role in corporate finance, acquisition financing, and so on in the tech industry. So one of the tech banks, Silicon Valley Bank. I was there for just over 3 years. While I was there, the deals that I enjoyed the most were fintech, e-commerce, B2C, consumer internet. Slowly started gaining all sorts of information through, sort of you call it information sovereignty, as we like to call it, through the internet. Seeking alternative sources of information, waking up to how flawed the current financial system is, all the issues we're having, how we could solve a lot of the issues in the world, which again, in future podcasts, we can go into this stuff for hours and hours, which is why we're all passionate and why we're here at Bitstocks. So that all led me to research into blockchain and crypto, and here we are. So working with like-minded individuals, and super pumped to be here. Not so much about working with Stephen every day, but otherwise it's going to be an absolute ride, and I've enjoyed every second of it so far. So first thing I want to get your thoughts on, because the day I joined, 6th of August, and that first week, so Ilya, who's the head of OTC at Bitstocks, I've known him since we were little kids, and I've never seen him so depressed. I mean, he's usually known for being a bit of a moody kind of guy, but I've never seen him so depressed. And he said to me, "You've joined at the most interesting time because of the current bear market." Fair enough. I'm absolutely aware of all the peaks and troughs we've seen over the history of the market since Genesis. However, what we've seen recently, people didn't really expect that, especially after the January bull run. What are your thoughts on the current bear market? Be interested to get your...
He's completely right. You've joined at the most interesting time. It may not be the happiest time, but it surely is the most interesting because it's time like these that really weed out the weak hands and those who aren't really well educated in the space.
Yep.
So it's no secret the cryptocurrency market has been dropping, and it's been dropping at a rapid rate.
Yep.
We saw Bitcoin rise just before the new year all the way up to $20,000, and now we've seen it scale back, currently trading at around $6,400 roughly. Now, you can't pinpoint one particular reason, but there's several different reasons that have basically had an effect on the market.
Sure.
One of which is the whole thing with the Bitcoin ETF coming up. Now, that necessarily hasn't had an impact on the drop of the market, but if we look at Bitcoin dominance, that has certainly had a massive effect. Last year, we saw Bitcoin dominance go anywhere from 35% all the way up to 55%.
Sure.
We're currently trading at 55% dominance. Now, that tells us that a lot of money has been drawn from altcoins, coins like Ethereum, EOS, 0x, Ripple, and been put into Bitcoin. Now, the reason being is because when ETFs are traditionally approved, it pretty much provides a gateway where institutional money can come into the market, whether it be your private equity, whether it be your pension funds, etc. It basically provides that gateway where they can enter.
Yep.
Now, having said that, if we look at historically what an ETF has done, gold, silver, copper, even ETFs of bonds, etc., they have sent price parabolic. And it's simply because it allows more people in. Now, that's why Bitcoin dominance is so high. It's because people are, pretty much forecasting an ETF to be approved, which will then send their investment parabolic, chasing the money. Whether that is the case, I'm not too sure. I definitely don't think an ETF will be approved in 2018. A bit of a bold statement, but after doing a lot of research into it, definitely not going to be approved in 2018. Next thing why the market is down is because of weak hands. Now, we can't have exponential growth, which went from $2,000 last August all the way up to $20,000. And people expect it to be some sort of linear or exponential function when it's really not. Like anything, what goes up comes down. And that cryptos simply aren't exclusive to this. So yeah, market goes up and down. And people are sort of seeing this as an unhealthy stage. A lot of people are selling out. A lot of people did buy into the market last summer on credit, so they simply couldn't afford the investments, but they're just buying in to get their slice of the pie. But yeah, it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, I could talk for hours. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because a lot of the events that I was going to last year, a lot of the analysts that I was speaking to, every single person's view was by the end of 2018, Bitcoin will not be the most dominant coin. Now, we're actually seeing a reversal of that, which to me is super interesting times. Do I think it will be the most dominant by the end of the year? I do. We'll go on to that shortly. I mean, as you said, we could talk about this stuff for hours. Being the first podcast, we've got just a few points we'd like to touch on. But also, I mean, things like last month, hundreds and thousands of Ethereums were sold, because this was actually a lot of the ICO projects in the ICO craze. They'd raised a lot of their capital in Ethereum, and this was essentially in the bear market. A lot of them had lost maybe 60-70% of the capital that they'd raised. And so bear market, natural reaction, panic selling, vicious cycle, obviously price further declines, further panic selling, and essentially a lot of them are offloading and going back into BTC or fiat. So what do they answer? What do they say to their investors, who invested in these ICOs a few months ago and now they've lost all this Ethereum investment? Not wise. But that is essentially one of the reasons we're seeing BTC dominance go up, and the vicious cycle of panic selling. So a lot of money going out of the alts at the moment. Excuse me. Also, a lot of this is actually, it's weeding out and removing all the amateur investors. So all those who got into the crypto market for the get-rich-quick scheme. In my opinion, the prices we saw earlier this year in January were extremely inflated, beyond inflated. Some were comparing it to Tulip Mania. I'm not surprised. This is actually removing all those investors who got in for the ICO craze, those who just wanted to get rich quick, didn't really understand the fundamentals of the projects, didn't understand the technology behind it. And people like us, me and you, we're in it for some of the coins we're holding onto for 5 years, 10 years plus, because we strongly believe, for those not familiar with the term, hodling, holding on for dear life, because we're in it for the long haul. So this is essentially removing all the investors from the market who have absolutely no idea, who a lot of people actually that I feel sorry for because they're uninformed, borrowing a lot of money, they're investing on credit, and now they've lost all that money, and now they're struggling to pay back the loans that they took out for these investments. So interesting times. It was bound to happen. It's a correction. I wouldn't be surprised to see prices further decline in the coming weeks as well, based on some technical analysis and fundamentals that we've looked at over here. But yeah, so another thing that obviously off the back of the current market, I'd like to hear your thoughts on is forward outlook. Obviously, I briefly just touched on by the end of the year, I think BTC will still be the most dominant. But beyond the end of the year as well, what's your opinion on forward outlook and the future? What does the future hold in your...
So you mentioned you think BTC is going to be the most dominant coin. Totally agree with that. Even though I do deem Bitcoin Cash the true Bitcoin, I think it's way too early for the flippening to happen.
I agree. Yeah.
I think that's more of a gradual process that will be over the next 24 to 48 months. To be conservative, I think cryptos are here to stay, and the reason being is because even though price is stagnating, price is pretty much trading sideways at the minute. There's development work that is pretty much continuing. Now, development work hasn't ceased. It's still continuing. Bitcoin Cash are upgrading, adding different opcodes, etc. We've seen platforms like EOS, putting out new constitutions or saying they're going to put out new constitutions. Development work is still ongoing. Now, while I do think the ETF will bring volume to the cryptocurrency markets, I think the thing that defines cryptos is utility and usability. If you can't use it, there's no value. If it has no intrinsic value behind it, again, it's going to decline to zero. Now, in terms of looking forward, we've seen currently that the market is made up of 97% of retail investors.
Correct.
Which means 3% comes from institutions. For the first time ever, retail investors have actually got into a market before the institutions. Now, we've seen tons of institutions, well-known, prolific, like BlackRock, who have launched their blockchain department. We've seen IBM basically involve blockchain technology within them. We've seen Goldman say they're going to come out and be almost like the prime brokers of cryptocurrencies. So there is ongoing work. There's wider adoption. We're seeing e-commerce places take up cryptos as payments. Cryptos are here to stay. And the fact that price is so low, it just screams a massive buy to me, personally. Again, not financial advice, but for me, it's personally a massive, massive buy at the minute.
Yeah, 100% agree. I just loaded up on the EOS last week, which we'll touch on shortly as well. In my opinion, one of the greatest projects out there at the moment. Future outlook, yes, BTC will be the most dominant by the end of the year. Retail investors, I'm very glad that for once have got into something before the institutional money. A lot of the institutions have woken up late. The alarm bells are ringing now, so you see the likes of Goldman Sachs getting involved. Last week, what actually really interests me is the Goldman Sachs news that came out of Business Insider, which actually hammered the markets. It took a short-term hit. So I think BTC was hovering around 7K. The news of Business Insider came out about Goldman Sachs essentially postponing or pushing down their priority list the crypto trading desk that they had and the plans for that. And that had a short-term hit. So BTC dropped from around 7K, I think, to about 6.3. In addition to obviously about 11,000 Bitcoins being released from Silk Road to different wallets. So things like this. And then a few days later, we found out it was actually false news. It was fake news. And to me, that's shocking coming out. I mean, I'm not actually surprised coming out of Business Insider. Do your research. I won't go into those conspiracies, but focusing on, traditional media, no, you need to get the information from the source. Of course, it gets difficult when it's the source is Goldman Sachs and they're not going to release the information to you. So a lot of this space and the outlook, it's all about gaining adoption. We're seeing huge improvements. Every morning we do a roundup of the news in the office. Every morning we're talking about adoption here and adoption there. And one of the portfolio managers said, great, we're seeing all this. We're saying adoption every day for the last couple of years, but where's the execution? Problem is some of these things, because of the regulation that's also being worked on, people are unsure. they're getting lawyers on their side, they're getting all sorts of advice, and the execution actually takes a lot of time. So it is coming. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. In my opinion, it is here to stay. Some believe that there's a small chance that the future of crypto, it could go two ways. It could go to it could blow up, go to absolute zero, or it's here to stay for good. Most people lean to it's here to stay for good, including myself. And yeah, 2019, further adoption, but I don't think in the next couple of years or next 2-3 years, we'll still see anything huge in terms of development with respect to, let's say, in 20 to 30 years from now. A lot of people compare this to the internet in the early to mid 90s. So do I. I'm usually not a patient person in life, but I've learned to be patient in this game, just purely because of the passion I have for the underlying fundamentals, the problems that it solves, which again, we'll go into in another podcast. I mean, even today, like one of the pieces of news that came out, I got here, Gemini launches regulated crypto pegged to the dollar. So the Winklevoss twins, who have had their ETF plans rejected a few times, now finally this. So again, great news. The ETF, I don't think it's going to get approved on 30th of September. But in future, yes, so 2019, maybe a big year for the ETF, yet to see. But yeah, I mean, you touched on it earlier, gold and other ETFs, all these traditional investments, look how long it took for them to get comfortable with the ETFs on those assets.
Exactly.
They're not going to get comfortable this soon and this quick with BTC and the crypto market. So they all get comfortable, in my opinion, just not yet. So bear with it. If you are here to stay, if you are passionate about the technology, make sure you understand the deep underlying fundamentals. Do your own research is the most important thing. Question absolutely everything. Every piece of news that comes out, research the flip side of it. Basically, the due diligence that's involved, in my personal opinion, most don't actually understand the level of due diligence that is involved. A deep dive is an understatement. You need to really live and breathe this space and rip apart every piece of analysis that you're doing and go really, really deep and question everything. But yeah, mate, I think we'll wrap up with the last thing I'd really like to touch on is your opinion on, if you could name us maybe one big mover in the market, which you're heavily banking on, one project that you're very bullish on at the moment.
So one of the projects I would say to keep an eye on is WanChain. Amazing project. As a quick snippet overview, it's basically a blockchain for financial services. So whether it be exchanges, loans, insurance, etc. It is an amazing project. The team is unparalleled, head and shoulders above most teams I've seen. And one of the main things that really stand out to me is what it's trying to achieve. So it's amazing having tons of different cryptocurrency projects, right? Think of them as specs on a piece of paper. Where the true value comes is actually interconnecting these. So it's fine having different snippets of value, but when you can actually interlink different things, that is when we take value to the next case. We've seen it, before with the internet. You briefly touched upon it. Before the internet, there was no real way someone in China could contact someone in the US, for example. There was no real way for people to actually question current media. So, the media reports could say one thing, but there was actually no way before the internet where someone could actually reach out to a witness that was there and actually see his side of the story. That is essentially what cryptocurrencies do, and it's what projects like WanChain do. Projects that are striving to connect blockchains, making it interoperable between them, sharing information. That for me is the key value. One of the really interesting conversations I had with Dustin, who was the ex-leader of WanChain, was that the person he handed it down to, a man called Jack, he actually anticipated this bear market. And having said that, he actually was super tight on spending. Not tight, but careful. So he wouldn't over leverage himself instead in the case of spending. And that has basically afforded him now enough money to actually pursue development work with, like you said, most cryptocurrency projects have, the decline in prices has really hit them hard, and they're not able to actually fulfill their promises to the community because they simply don't have the money there. So it's got to be WanChain for me. I'm pretty confident I know what your one's going to be, but tell the viewers and explain.
So not a surprise, I'm heavily bullish on EOS. We'll have key members from the wider EOS community on the podcast in the coming weeks. to give you further perspective and insight. But my 2 cents, I think, with all the work that's going on in the background, so the worker proposal system, you've got the whole referendum going on at the moment, the block producers, that they're discussing. There's actually an EOS Alliance call I believe it's every month with 50 key influencers in the EOS community worldwide, including the 21 block producers who hop on a call. I'd be glad to, I've been touching base with some of them, but I'd be glad to get further insight from them. But a lot of the analysis that I've done in the back end of what's really going on and the problems that it solves that Ethereum has actually failed in solving. EOS, in my opinion, is here to stay. The price of EOS right now, it's Boxing Day sales. Go get yourself a bargain. I loaded up last week, and essentially, I think other than EOS, other projects which we'll touch on in the coming weeks. Obviously, this is, a lot of people won't agree with this, but we're heavily bullish on Bitcoin Cash. You may be aware of the upcoming fork in November, or some believe there will not be a fork. We'll have key members from the Bitcoin Cash community on the podcast as well. But yeah, so along with your WAN chain, which I'm also bullish on, these are projects to look out for, that we look out for. We don't recommend you look out for. We recommend you do your own research before you look out for anything. And yeah, mate. So I think
great
time to wrap
podcast.
Up. Absolutely, 100% agree. Great first podcast. We'll link up a few things in the description. Any questions, please shoot them our way. Please bear with us. We are newbies at the podcast game. We'll get better and better. Any tips for improving, please drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And we're going to have guests coming on in the podcast going forward as well. Occasionally, it will just be myself and Stephen chopping it up, talking current markets, what's currently going on, and anything else. But on other occasions, we'll have special guests from the industry, key members and influencers. But just to finalize, just to leave people with a thought, I think what you touched on earlier was amazing, how before the internet, people couldn't really share any information. As our CEO, Michael Hudson, said in his presentation, which will link up in the notes and the description, the Tools of Humanity presentation he did. He talks about the internet being launched in the 90s being the first ring of sovereignty, which is information freedom. And now we're seeing the second ring of sovereignty, which is financial freedom in the form of cryptocurrencies. And, I'm extremely passionate about someone in sub-Saharan Africa or the Middle East or in the more deprived areas of the world who have access to information freedom via the internet, but cannot push their products or services via payment service because they're unbanked, and such a large population of the world is unbanked. I'm passionate about helping those people. That's why we're all here. And yeah, mate, I'd be very looking forward to future podcasts and talking further about topics like that and what's going on in the current space. So thanks for listening, guys. Got a bit emotional there at the end.
We are also, quickly before wrapping up, we're also looking to take the podcast global as well. We're going to be doing global events. We're also having our world tour coming up. So that'll be a great time to sort of give you guys insight as to what we do. And it will be filled with pretty much information, interviewing different people, and just keeping up to date with everything in the news.
Yeah, we're always looking at new projects as well. So on our world tour, we'd love to meet with any of you guys, discuss your projects. Great platform for you guys, hopefully, to discuss your projects on as well, and for us to find out more about all the exciting things going on. So thanks for listening, guys, and catch you on the next episode.
Peace out.
Peace.